Hi, guten Tag, bonjour, ciao. I'm Sylvie di Giusto, and you are listening to A Shark's Perspective.
Bonjour tout le monde et bienvenue à A Shark's Perspective. Je m'appelle Kenneth Kinney, mais mes amis m'appellent Rickion. Wait, I gotta go back to English. I got too inspired by our guest today. I'm Kenneth Kinney, but friends call me Shark. I'm a keynote speaker, a strategist, a shark diver, host of the show, and your chief shark officer. You know, people often feel stuck and without deserved recognition. Many, though, just haven't discovered yet their own advantage. There are so many ways you can succeed while increasing your visibility and identifying your unique selling points, as well as overcoming self-sabotaging behaviors. Then how should you go about finding that and employing it for work, business, and life? How do you as a leader discover your own fair advantage? Sylvie di Giusto is an international keynote speaker with 20 plus years of corporate experience in Europe, and she's also the author of The Image of Leadership, as well as Discover Your Fair Advantage, Leverage Your Unique Selling Points for Work, Business, and Life. And on this episode, we will discuss 7 seconds and how leaders package themselves to stand out for the right reasons, differentiators, 5 cornerstones of modern emotional intelligence, a Spanish, Italian, French, Austrian heritage, building a foundation for a fair advantage and committing to that advantage, conscious and subconscious biases, about 185 of them, what happens in 8 seconds, famous Austrians, when to be out on a boat in the bay, shared meditation methods, hard-hitting questions that Fox News and CNN won't ask, and a lot more. So let's tune into an international speaker who meditates on a boat with an internationally speaking shark who meditates in the water on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Sylvie, welcome to A Shark's Perspective. If you will, tell us a little bit about your background and your career to date.
Thank you very much for having me. It's the first time ever I'm on a podcast with a shark, so I'm very excited. That's the first time.
Talk about making a good 7-second impression.
A good 7-second impression, right? Other than the 7 seconds, which are a topic in my business, I spent now around 12 years in the speaking circus. I help organizations and individuals find out what their first impression says about them and how they can use 5 modern tools of emotional intelligence to control their first and hence their lasting impression. Before that, I spent around 20 years in corporate Europe. Always have been involved if somebody got hired or fired and everything in between, so in human resources, and live a beautiful life here in South Florida in the Tampa Bay area after 10 years being in New York City, Manhattan. That was a short run.
That's perfect. So let's talk a little bit about your first book, and then I want to talk about your new book. So The Image of Leadership, how leaders package themselves to stand out for the right reasons. What was the impetus for the book?
So The Image of Leadership is based on my 20 years of corporate career, especially the last 10 years, where I built up a management academy for the biggest tourism and retail company in Europe. I was responsible for the top 100 leaders in that organization who had around 100,000 employees. And what always fascinated and frustrated me alike was that when we hired people for those top positions in the organizations, most often we looked outside. And then I was involved in those interviews. And, the people walked into the room, they said all the right things, they looked exactly the way we wanted them to say, they behaved exactly the way we wanted them to behave. And years later, I had to fire them because of a total lack of performance. So I thought, what is the difference between first, how we perceive people and why are we often wrong? And second, why do not some of our very ambitious young people in the own organization stand out to us as potential leaders and obviously don't have that image of leadership making us believe that they would be the way better fit for that position? And so it was my first dive into the world of image and positioning and branding. And I developed a small model called the ABCD model during that time. And I remember, since you are also such a successful speaker, I was at a book lab at the very beginning of my speaking journey, and Mark Sanborn, one of the biggest leadership speakers in the United States, said to me, after I had thousands of excuses not to publish that book, he said, nobody cares about your first book, but everybody cares that you have a first book.
Good point.
And that was very wise recommendation. So I went down and published it. But unfortunately, he grabbed my shoulder and pulled me back and said, but you need a really good second book. And here I am now.
Yeah, with a really big and good second book called Discover Your Fair Advantage. Leverage your unique selling points and human potential for work, business, and life. So let's pivot a little bit towards that. Talk about the setup for the book and where that comes from as well.
Well, you are all the listeners, including you are all marketing experts and sales experts. So I don't have to tell you what a unique selling point or unique selling proposition is. And we are all great in applying the unique selling proposition idea on products and services. But have you ever applied it on yourself as an individual? What is unique about you? So unique that nobody else can offer what you offer. And so in my sessions, very often, if I ask professionals, what is unique about you? They come up with very average and mediocre responses like, I'm just better, or I'm faster, or I sell better products, or I offer better customer service. But if you use those meaningless phrases, you get into a comparison trap. Because if I walk over to your biggest competitor, my bet is, if I ask them, what about you? They also say, well, my customers' experience and service that I offer is way better than yours, and I'm faster and I'm better. And so I spent 3 years of research and writing to figure out how we can use the concept of unique selling proposition on individuals. And in this book, I help you to identify 15 of your unique selling points that make you the one-of-a-kind human being and professional that you are, so that at the very end, you really can say, I'm a category of one. There is nobody else out there who offers those 15 unique selling points.
That's fantastic. So before we jump into this massive book, what do you think your unique selling point is for you?
Well, I could tell you now 15 of them, because obviously I applied the concept on myself, but I tell you one that is most often the most surprising one. So one of the chapters covers one of the unique selling points, competition and dominance. What do you do different and not just better than your competitor? Do you have an answer for yourself, Shark? What do you,
What do I do? What are brands I work with do different?
Yes. Yeah. What do you do different than your biggest competitor?
Well, so from a speaking standpoint, I don't know anybody else that swims with sharks on an active basis. And people keep telling me to lean in. That's why I'm asking you this question.
Yeah.
I often try to push myself away because of my own corporate background experience. I want to kind of, live and talk about that. But then I get people who nonstop want me to lean into more of the unique standpoint of, I'm the only person they know that actively swims with sharks. I mean, my own speaker demo reel has a warning, don't try this without a professional. It's me diving with sharks. Yeah. And so that is probably mine.
So, which is a wonderful response, but chances are high that I find another speaker who dives with sharks, right? So, and this is a good example of what we very often do is we respond instantly, but the first question to ask would actually be, who is my competitor? And we forget that we have direct competitors, indirect competitors, current and future competitors. So, for example, one of our future competitors is clearly artificial intelligence. right? And so very often we don't even think about the fact who is our competitor and who is coming down the line that I can answer that question accordingly. So as for myself, I just give you an example and don't walk you through all the steps. But what I found is years ago, when I lived in New York City, one evening a TV producer reached out to me, or the team of a TV show reached out to me and said, can you come in this evening and comment about the public persona of Chris Christie, a politician of New Jersey? And I said, sure, right? At the very beginning, I didn't question, it was Fox News. I didn't question who is Chris Christie. I just jumped into a taxi or Uber or Lyft and went to the studio. On the way, I Googled who is Chris Christie, because honestly, I had no idea or didn't know much about him, so that I could give answers to whatever questions occur. So I was in the show, and for whatever, it was a setup where I was with political experts, and they follow politicians throughout the day. And like TMC in the evening, they come together and report about their days. In the evening, I watched it, and I didn't like myself on camera. And then they invited me again and again and again and again, and I became a regular part of that show. But it was horrible for me to watch that show myself in the evening, because there were all those well-spoken politicians. They had picture-perfect English. They had so sophisticated, yummy words that I didn't even know what they meant, but they just sounded so impressive to me. Long story short, at the holiday party of Fox News, I was invited. I sit down with the producer after a glass of wine. I approach him and said, I have no idea why you invite me again and again. And I share my insecurities with him and point to my mouth and say, this just sounds horrible. And then he said something to me that forever changed my life. He said, that's the reason why we invite you. Because first, you sound like an international expert. And second, you say things so easily that everybody in the audience understands you, while they don't understand the political experts. And that is my unique selling point compared to my competitors. Nobody can fake that. Nobody can come and say, from now on, I'm gonna have a strong accent, right? Because I wanna sound like somebody who has a Spanish grandmother, an Italian grandfather, a French father, and an Austrian mother. And I realized that I would say 90% of my speaking audiences are from companies with a global perspective. And that is something that only I can offer, and none of my competitors. And so even if I thought it's a weakness, it's actually a unique selling point. And throughout my book, I take you on a very intense journey of self-discovery to find 15 of these unique selling points that only you can offer.
That was so much better than my swimming with sharks comment. I have no excuse. But I also, to your credit, and even Fox News, is that when you don't know who that person is, you can look at it without a lot of the bias that exists. You don't become kind of in that prison of two ideas where you're locked in politically, wondering, how do you look at somebody with whether you have a red jersey or a blue jersey on? Then you just inject too much bias. But this book is outstanding. It's roughly 500 pages, and it's in 3 parts. And I'd like to, at least from a very high level, go into each section. But from a high level, how do we go about building the foundation for our fair advantage?
Well, the foundation requires a few steps. First of all, you need to commit to fully stand out. You can't leverage your fair advantage by blending in. And so there are 2 ways to stand out, for the right reasons and for the wrong reasons. So I cover a little bit how to stand out for the right reasons and not for the wrong reasons, and why it is important to commit to standing out and what visibility has to do with it. because we very often think that opportunities will just walk by and see us, but unfortunately, that's not how it works. Decision makers who are empowered to make decisions about your career, no matter if you are employed in a company or if you are self-employed, then the decision maker is your customer, right? They have a variety of options out there. And you need to commit to stand out from the sea of sameness. And so I take you through a few visibility types and visibility levels in the first part of the book to help you identify where you actually are and what you have to change to what I call to become a visibility strategist, which is to show up and stand out at the right time, at the right moment, with the right people. Because in the best case, visibility happens without you involved. We always think that visibility is something where we have to raise our hand, say something smart, stand out. But the highest level of visibility is when people talk about you in a room where you are not present, where somebody knows so much about you that when an opportunity arises, they say, oh, do you know about Shark? He has exactly what we need, and opportunities for you are created without you being involved or knowing about it. And that is the part that the first part of the book covers all of this.
Well, again, from a high level with part 2, how do you go about discovering what that advantage is?
Mm-hmm. Well, we dive into 15 different chapters, and every chapter gives you tools and a lot of questions. You will be tired of my questions that I ask you to identify those 15 unique selling points. And they go from what are your values and beliefs? How do you show up at work? My values are very different from yours. Right? What are your 3 core values and beliefs? What is your origin and story? Everybody comes with a unique story, with a past that has influenced the way we now go to work. You might have grown up with a single mother or as a sibling of 18 children, or you might have traveled the world with your parents. So everybody brings a story, and very often we think, wow, that is personal. But that has crafted the human being that you are. We go into your natural talents and gifts. Has nothing to do with your skills and experiences. But each of us is born with a set of natural talents, something that just comes easily to you, where you get angry if others don't apply it because it comes so easily to you, not realizing, well, that is just your natural gift and others have a different set of natural gifts. Then yes, we talk about your skills and competencies, the skills that you have learned over the time of your career path and education. Then we dive into expertise and thought leadership. What exactly is your expertise? To position yourself as a marketing expert is not enough, because there are millions out there who say that they are a marketing expert. So we dive really deep into what in your expertise makes you unique, something in marketing that only you can offer. Accomplishments and achievements is another one of my favorite chapters, because rarely do we sit down and write out what we have accomplished so far. Well, some of us are lucky and have awards and media coverage, but on a day-to-day basis, if you ever sit down and would really think about what have I truly accomplished so far, you will be surprised how many achievements and accomplishments are related to you. Might be increase of revenue, or might be saving of costs, and many more things. Then we talk about your clients and praise. You know, very often we struggle bragging about ourselves. So it's much easier you let others brag about you. Who are your top clients? What do they consistently say about you? And how can you use that for your own positioning? We talk about problems and solutions. What problem do you solve? Very often people instantly think of their job title and say, well, I'm a marketing expert. I solve every problem around marketing. But again, this is what all others say as well. So I go with you on the underlying problem that you solve: emotional pain points, strategic pain points, financial pain points, diversity pain points. There are so many pain points clients have that they can't formulate, and I help you to formulate how you actually help them. Who is your audience and your buyer? We always think about the buyer that buys us and our service, but we all also have an audience, and they influence the buyer to make that buying decision. Then what I just mentioned, competition and dominance, your location and reach is also a unique selling point. And very often we underestimate the fact that our location has a story to tell, also has a reputation. And what is your exact reach? How do you define that? Then passions and obsessions. Each of us is passionate about something where we get goosebumps, and rarely do we bring that to our daily work. So how can you position your passion for diving, for example, not just by saying that you dive, but what benefit does that have for the decision makers? So, for example, you could say something like, I'm a passionate diver. I don't have fear. I'd like to take risks. And that from there, we go into positioning that for companies who are risk averse and how you can help them, right? What do you volunteer for, and where are you an advocate? What topics are important to you? And last but not least, fun facts. What is something that nobody knows about you, but that is just amazing, and even your workplace should know about it? Thank you very much for coming to my TED Talk. That was a very long monologue here.
No, that alone is the perfect reason to go purchase the book. I am curious, though, as people discover this, and as you've seen this over your career, as they're looking for their advantage or their unique selling point, do you find that people are surprised that their impression, because you were talking about this a lot with with the 7 seconds and how they make that first impression, are you finding that more people are surprised that they contradict what people's first impression of them is, or are they more often right about what they think their first impression is? Because I think this sort of plays into how they go about discovering what that advantage is.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's a wake-up call and sometimes it's not.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That is a very good question. I'm going to respond to you what I always say to my speaking clients. I tell them, I can't fix all your problems, right? But when I come and speak to your audience, usually in the audience, I find 3 different groups. One group, they are just okay. They are good. They already have figured it out. They might walk out with 1 or 2 or 3 tools that I give them to do something that they're already doing good, just better. And I'm excited to meet them. One group will have a aha moment, right? Realizing I had no idea that, first of all, this matters so much. Second, that there is so much brain performance happening that I had no idea that I'm fighting against, or that I can also use to my advantage, and just are relieved that they finally found the reason why nobody perceives them this way and nobody perceives them that way. And then I'm also honest, there is one group I will never be able to change, because they are so convinced that what they are doing is right and what you are doing is wrong. And the actual problem from a corporate perspective is that I tell my clients, usually they are in the wrong positions anyway. Their first impression really is not as much as important as the actual problem that they create, that they are the wrong people for the wrong jobs.
Great point. So part 3, you talk about not sabotaging your fair advantage, but I'm curious, as we create this footprint go forward, even whether you're in the workplace, because I know you talk about dealing with executives as well. For a lot of people, they've already passed the first impression.
Yeah.
And start over with a first impression so that someday they could be CEO, if you know what I mean.
So there are two types of sabotage. One is it's an outside job, and one is an inside job. Let's start with the outside job. When you make a first impression on somebody, even if I market myself everywhere with those 7 seconds, it's just a number that I have from one study. It can be shorter, longer, repeated, and so on. But what happens afterwards is that very powerful sources are working against you. Conscious biases. Our subconscious mind is very strong. We know that there are around 185 unconscious biases out there. One of them is confirmation bias. People just want to be right. They look for proof. So even if you made a mistake and don't make a mistake again, they are still looking for proof that you make it again and again and again and again. Because our brains want to be right. Anchoring bias anchors that information in their brain, and they just cannot let go of it. It will pop up every single time when you have contact to them, or even not. The bandwagon effect. If somebody else confirms what they thought about you, they instantly jump on the bandwagon, because if others think the same, we all must be right. So the actual problem is not the first impression. The actual challenge are those unconscious biases afterwards that you have to redirect. And so this takes time, and this takes effort, and this takes notice of factors like each of them comes with a different set of cultural beliefs, generational background. So there is no one size fits all formula. But I always say, if there is a country of second chances, it's the United States, and you always have a second chance. And what I just encourage you to do is, if you control that first impression at the very beginning, those unconscious biases can also work in your favor. You do something outstanding in those first 7 seconds, and their brain is instantly looking for proof. They will anchor it, and they also jump on the bandwagon effect if somebody else mentions that, right? So just use them to your advantage. The bigger problem very often is the inside job, how we sabotage ourselves. That is self-discipline, self-care, self-promotion. If those things, for example, lack, or self-protection lack, then it is an inside job. As a professional in a workplace, for example, we very often underestimate how important self-care is for ourselves, and then in the hustle of the day, we forget about it and sabotage all the hard work that we have put into leveraging our fair advantage. And so, especially if you ever aspire some sort of leadership position in your organization, even if it's just a small department in your marketing agency, there's a very simple concept. The moment you take care of yourself, others think that you have the capability to take care of others too. But if you don't take care of yourself, they don't perceive you instantly as somebody who could take care of them too. So that is the third part of that book, where we first dive into all those filters. Hence, when you see the book cover in front of you, then you also see lenses and filters that people perceive you, and how biases influence the decision-making. But the bigger part is about the inner self-sabotage, the inside job, how we lack discipline, how we lack motivation, how we lack self-care, and how we lack self-protection.
Such great thoughts. And I hope everybody takes advantage of reading this book. Discover your fair advantage, leverage your unique selling points and human potential for work, business, and life. So, Sylvie, this is an obvious follow-up question. I ask this of everybody who appears on the show. And since you live in the Tampa Bay area, it makes even more sense. What is your favorite kind of shark, and why?
My favorite kind of shark are all the sharks that my brother catches and releases back into the ocean.
Okay. Yeah. Good.
because I'm a devoted boater and I go out on my boat very often, and I have the pleasure that my best friend in life is my brother. He lives here with us in Florida, and while I'm just relaxing on the boat, he's very often with me, and I make fun of him that all he catches are unfortunately sharks, but we release all of them again.
Good. Well, Sylvie, it's that special time of the show. Are you ready for the 5 most interesting and important questions that you're going to be asked today?
I'm not ready. I'm scared.
Okay. Well, we talked about 7 seconds earlier, but let's talk about 8 seconds. That was a movie. I know that 7 seconds came from an NYU study, but 8 seconds refers to the length of time a bull rider is required to stay on for a ride to be scored. So the obvious question for you is, if you had to be in a rodeo, you're going to laugh later at these. You'll get it. And would you rather ride a bucking bull or a bucking bronco? That's one you haven't been asked. Fox News won't ask you that one.
Yeah. So, a bull and bronco, is that somehow related to
horse?
sports?
Horse, is it riding a horse or riding a bull?
Horses and bull. Thank you very much. I'm not sure if you've noticed, but English is not my first language. I have an accent. I would rather ride a horse, of course.
Okay.
More elegant, more beautiful, more strong.
Question 2. In the 20th century, with your Austrian heritage, you'll appreciate this. Which of these Austrians had a bigger impact on the world? Sigmund Freud or Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Well,
I had to think about this. I mean, there's one who's the father of psychology, and then there's the one who's had, the father of all the action movies.
Yes. But see, this is how we perceive people differently. My mind didn't instantly go there. My mind went to all the horrible things that Sigmund Freud supposedly did beyond his studies. And even with Arnold Schwarzenegger, my mind went to him as a politician. And the fact how impressive his track record is in changing a career, and nowadays being vocal about topics he wouldn't have to be vocal. So I'm going to go with Arnold.
Okay. Well, and his name keeps, the idea of his name keeps coming up to me because as I hear more about Chat GPT and AI all the time, I'm reminded of Terminator movies and Skynet and all that kind of stuff. All right. Question 3. We'll get to the less ridiculous because you spend a lot of time out on the boat. Sunrises or sunsets?
Well, first of all, both, obviously. But if I would have to pick, it's the sunrise.
Why so?
Because it is so quiet out there at 5:30 or 6 in the morning. I feel so alone and grounded. I don't meditate, but I think that is my way of meditation.
Yeah.
And then the only noise that usually gets me out of that quietness is when the dolphins come into the bay and say hello at the boat. And that is a good problem to have.
I agree. I don't meditate either, but my time underwater is my meditation. That's a lot of people don't understand. So, all right, number 4, conscious footprint or unconscious footprint?
Conscious.
Why so?
Yes. Intention is the key. What people think about you is not what they tell you to your face, and is what they think and say about you behind your back. So you don't have a lot of influence anyways. So at least control what is controllable for you with intention, and leave a conscious footprint in the areas where you can.
Great point. All right, number 5, and the most important question that you're going to be asked today is biscuits or cornbread?
Oh my God, those are difficult questions.
Again, CNN, Fox News, they won't ask you these hard-hitting questions.
Yes. But it's kind of deciding between CNN and Fox News when you decide between biscuits and cornbread. And I
They would ask, did a
think,
Democrat cook those biscuits or did a Republican cook the cornbread? That would be the question.
oh, that is a tough question.
Look, a
It
lot of your speaking
depends.
friends,
It
Fanzo,
depends.
Jay Bear, Seth
Yeah,
Godin, all of them have done this.
are the biscuits kind like with butter and
Yeah.
Italian herbs and a little bit of
American
Parmesan?
biscuits. Could be. Yeah.
American biscuits.
Okay.
Well, I think I'm gonna go with biscuits, but can I add a but? Every year we have a tradition. We only eat cornbread once a year, and that is to Thanksgiving. And one of my best friends brings them. So it's tough. It's tough to decide against her because she is lovely. The cornbread is lovely, but a really good biscuit. Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. So, Sylvie, where can people find out more about you, get a copy of the book, see what you're doing in the speaking world, keep up with your thought leadership and more?
Oh, thank you very much. Well, just type in my not so easy name, Sylvie di Giusto, into Google, and you will find a lot. First of all, my website. On my website, by the way, particularly, I invite you to take a free perception audit. It is a 10-minute audit, and the result is a personalized report how people perceive you. That doesn't mean that you are this way. Keep that in mind. It just tells you how people might perceive you. And then I'm very, very engaged on social media, on Instagram, on LinkedIn. You have to holler loud to find me on Facebook and on Twitter, but just stop by and connect with me. And last but not least, stop by Amazon and get a copy of my newest book, Discover Your Fear Advantage, to go with me on a journey of self-discovery. You can get it as paperback, as ebook, and even as audiobook, because this time I have decided to narrate it myself, even if I have that strong accent, because I thought, what would that be a story if I tell that one of my USPs is my accent and then I hire somebody else?
And then they got to leave a review.
Yeah, exactly. That would be fantastic if you leave a review for me. Thank you very much.
Sylvie, it's been an honor. Thank you very much for being with us today on A Shark's Perspective.
Thank you very much for having me. That was the least fear I ever had from sharks. The other one might not change in the future, but it was such a pleasure. And I so appreciate everything that you do for your audience in the marketing space and sales space, and what you do as a speaker for organizations. And yeah, I cannot wait to see you somewhere on stage.
Thank you so much. So there was my conversation with Sylvie di Giusto, an international keynote speaker with 20 plus years of corporate experience in Europe, and she's also the author of The Image of Leadership, as well as Discover Your Fair Advantage, leverage your unique selling points for work, business, and life. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from our conversation with her. First, well, I got lazy in my own answer about my own differentiator, and so shame on me. But she made several great points, though, and it's well worth reading the book just to think about those 15 different points she briefly covered in the discussion. But also, just don't think about your competitors today and what your differentiator is. Think about what your competitors are dreaming up to differentiate themselves from you in the future, in fact. But if you are as fanatical as I am about swimming with sharks and their conservation with my own corporate background and work primarily as a speaker, well, I want to meet you and call you friend, as long as you call me shark. Second, commit to your advantage. Lean into whatever it is. Your customer, whoever that is, has a variety of choices, so stand out in that sea of sameness. Love it when Sylvie says, become a visibility strategist, which is to show up and stand out at the right time, at the right moment, with the right people. Boom, hammer. She nailed it. Third, we spoke about her first book and the 7-second rule of first impressions. Just remember that you should think about, at least a little, about what is seen and what is unseen, especially with biases about you. Think about your professional imprint from a brand perspective. I'm not encouraging anyone to worry about what others think, because I don't do that, about you, and that's a whole different conversation. But even that still plays in how others perceive your personal brand. The good news is, though, a good chunk of that you can help control. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you again for the privilege of your time, and I am so thankful to everyone who listens. It's time to figure out what your own fair advantage is. One of mine is that you're here with me, and I appreciate you. So join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.